All right, we're diving into some major potential changes in U.S. immigration.
Yeah, some pretty big ones.
We're talking executive orders that could actually, redefine what it means to be an American citizen.
That's right.
It gets complicated.
It does.
You know, we're talking executive power, existing laws, basic constitutional rights.
Dumping the whole shebang.
Yeah, the whole thing.
What's interesting to me is how these orders signal a shift, not just in policy, but the whole narrative around immigration.
And they all came out on, day one.
All on President Trump's first day back.
So to unpack all this, we've got this policy brief from the American Immigration Lawyers Association. AILA. Yeah. And some of this stuff is intense.
Really is.
So first up, executive order protecting the meaning and value of American citizenship.
That's a loaded title.
Yeah, what's the core issue here?
Well, this order tries to restrict birthright citizenship, which, as you know, is rooted in the 14th Amendment. It says anyone born on U.S. soil is automatically a citizen.
So is this trying to change the Constitution?
Not directly, but it targets children born to undocumented parents. And those with temporary legal status, like H-1B visa holders.
So how would this even work? Does it just poof, go into effect?
Well, it's set to take effect in 30 days. And would apply to children born on or after February 20th, 2025.
So a little ways away.
Yeah, but there's already pushback.
I bet.
Multiple lawsuits were filed, within 24 hours, including one by 18 states.
They're saying it's unconstitutional.
Exactly. This is going to be a big legal fight.
This is huge.
It is.
And it's not just the legal side, right?
Right.
There was this Wall Street Journal poll. 64% of voters oppose ending birthright citizenship.
Yeah, this is a big deal to a lot of people.
It impacts families, kids. What are the long-term consequences?
Well, think about trying to attract global talent. If people are afraid their kids won't be citizens. We could see more statelessness.
People with no citizenship anywhere.
That's right.
Wow.
And you could end up with a whole class of people permanently excluded from society.
That's a lot to consider.
Definitely.
Okay, let's move on to another order.
All right.
Protecting the American people against invasion.
Oh, boy.
That sounds pretty scary.
Yeah, the use of invasion is very deliberate.
What do you mean?
It feeds into this narrative that immigration is a threat.
Right.
This order wants to reshape immigration enforcement within the U.S.
Okay, how so?
Well, for starters, it expands expedited removal, increases detention capacity, tries to defund sanctuary cities.
So making it harder for cities to protect undocumented immigrants.
Exactly. It also allows local law enforcement to do immigration tasks.
Oh, so giving them more power.
Yes, and increasing information sharing between agencies.
So a lot more coordination.
Exactly.
And it doesn't stop there, right? It brings back some programs from Trump's first term. I'm talking about VOICE.
Victims of immigrant crime.
Yeah, and SEERS.
The National Security Entry-Exit Registration System.
These were pretty controversial.
They were criticized a lot back then.
And now they're back.
It seems so.
What are the concerns with those?
Well, racial profiling. And a chilling effect on immigrant communities.
So one order might change who's a citizen.
Right.
And this one expands enforcement.
Yeah.
What does all this mean for the average person?
Well, these orders together represent a major departure from how we've handled immigration in the past.
That's a big deal.
It raises fundamental questions about citizenship, the government's role, and balancing security with individual rights.
So it's not just theoretical.
No.
This impacts real families?
Absolutely. This could lead to families being separated.
Wow.
More fear and uncertainty.
Yeah.
And less trust between immigrants and law enforcement.
It's a lot to think about.
It really is.
We need to understand the consequences of all of this.
Yes. And the impact it has on people.
Right, on real people.
Exactly.
So we just explored 2 executive orders that are already shaking things up.
Yeah, big changes.
One targeting birthright citizenship.
Right.
The other expanding immigration enforcement. But we're not done yet.
There's more.
There are a couple more orders in this AILA brief. And these focus directly on border security. And using military force.
Oh, wow.
This is where things get even more intense.
I see.
Let's start with the order titled Securing Our Borders. What's the gist of this one?
Well, this order lays out a multi-pronged approach to border control.
Okay.
And what's interesting is the emphasis on achieving complete operational control.
Complete operational control.
Yeah, that's a pretty significant shift.
And how the border is managed.
Exactly.
What stands out to you as the most significant aspects? What are the key changes?
Well, one of the most controversial elements is the revival of the Remain in Mexico policy, officially known as the Migrant Protection Protocols, or MPP.
MPP, okay.
This was a Trump-era policy that forces asylum seekers to wait in Mexico
while their cases are processed here.
Exactly.
That sounds really difficult for the asylum seekers.
It is. It raises serious humanitarian concerns.
Didn't we see problems with this policy before?
We did. It led to these dangerous, overcrowded camps on the Mexican side of the border, where migrants were vulnerable to all sorts of things.
Like what?
Exploitation, violence.
So it's pushing people seeking asylum into even more precarious situations.
Exactly.
What about other avenues for legal immigration? Are those being affected?
Well, this order also calls for the termination of certain humanitarian parole programs, including ones for Cubans, Haitians, Nicaraguans, and Venezuelans.
Those provided legal pathways, right?
They did. They were actually quite successful.
For people fleeing crises.
Yes, in their home countries.
So by ending those programs, is the administration essentially closing off legal options?
Potentially, yes.
And forcing more people to try to cross illegally?
It's a real concern.
Yeah.
The order also seeks to end catch and release.
The catch and release.
Which refers to releasing migrants into the U.S. while they await their hearings.
So they're not detained.
Right. But this order seems to suggest a move toward mandatory detention.
For anyone caught at the border.
That's what it seems like.
That sounds like a logistical nightmare.
It would be a huge challenge.
Can the system even handle that?
Detention centers are already overcrowded, understaffed.
Yeah.
Expanding them would be incredibly costly and time-consuming.
Not to mention the human rights concerns.
Exactly, detaining families and children indefinitely.
Wow. It feels like this order is creating a cascade of problems.
Yeah.
While trying to solve another.
It's complicated.
And this brings us to another executive order.
Okay.
Declaring a national emergency at the southern border. That's pretty strong language.
It is.
What's the story with this one?
Well, this order tries to justify using the military at the border.
Military?
Using the president's powers under the National Emergencies Act.
Okay.
It's a significant escalation.
So we're talking about soldiers patrolling the border?
Potentially, yes.
How would that even work?
Well, the order calls for the Department of Defense to support DHS enforcement efforts.
DHS being?
Department of Homeland Security.
Okay, right.
Providing resources for border barrier construction, apprehensions, and expanding detention capacity.
So a major shift in how we approach border security.
It seems that way.
Are there concerns about using the military like this?
Definitely. There are serious concerns about excessive force against migrants.
If the military gets more involved.
Exactly.
Wow.
Several veterans groups have already spoken out against it.
What are they saying?
They're arguing it's inappropriate.
Okay.
And could damage the military's reputation.
Why do they think that?
They say soldiers are trained for combat, not civilian law enforcement.
Right.
And using them this way could have unintended consequences.
So we've got increased border enforcement, potential deployment of the military.
Right.
And a crackdown on asylum seekers?
It's a lot.
It's a lot to take in.
Definitely.
What else is buried in this mountain of executive orders?
Well, there's one that focuses on terrorism.
Okay.
It's called Protecting the United States from Foreign Terrorists and Other National Security and Public Safety Threats.
That sounds pretty broad.
It is.
What does it actually do?
Well, it calls for identifying countries with supposedly deficient vetting procedures, which could then be subject to travel restrictions.
So, like travel bans?
Potentially.
Didn't we see those during Trump's first term?
We did, and they were very controversial. This raises concerns about discrimination and targeting people based on nationality or religion.
So it's not just about who can enter the country. Does it affect people already living here?
It does. It calls for enhanced vetting.
Of people already in the U.S.?
Yes, even those with legal status.
Wow. That's a big deal.
It is. It could create a lot of fear and uncertainty.
For immigrants who have been here for years?
Exactly.
Are there any legal concerns with that?
Yes. It raises concerns about due process. And overreach by immigration authorities.
So people could be deported?
Potentially.
Without sufficient legal protections?
That's the concern.
It seems like this order casts a wide net of suspicion.
It does.
Over immigrant communities.
Regardless of their status.
What about the order titled Designating Cartels and Other Organizations as Foreign Terrorist Organizations and Specially Designated Global Terrorists?
Right.
What's the focus there?
This order wants to label drug cartels as terrorist organizations.
As terrorist organizations?
Yes.
What does that even mean?
Well, it has big legal and operational implications.
Like what?
It lets the government use more tools
Okay.
and resources to combat them.
Like what kind of tools?
Military force, financial sanctions.
Okay.
It also makes it easier to prosecute people associated with them.
So there are definitely some pros to that,
There are.
but are there cons?
Critics argue that this approach is too broad
Okay.
and could criminalize activities that aren't really terrorism.
So it's a bit of a gray area.
You could say that.
This order also mentions using the Alien Enemies Act.
Yes.
That's a wartime authority, right?
It is.
It allows detaining and deporting people considered enemy aliens.
That's right.
Is that even relevant today?
A lot of people are concerned about that.
Why is that?
It's a very broad and powerful tool.
Okay.
It could be used to target a wide range of people.
Without due process.
That's the worry.
So we've got increased border enforcement,
Yeah.
potential military deployment,
Right.
crackdown on asylum seekers,
Mm-hmm.
labeling cartels as terrorists,
Yes.
and the Alien Enemies Act.
It's a lot.
It's a lot.
It really is.
It's a significant escalation in immigration enforcement
It's definitely.
and a dramatic shift in how we're approaching immigration.
It seems like the administration is taking a hard line.
But at what cost?
That's the question, isn't it?
One thing that stood out to me
Yeah.
from the AILA brief
Okay.
is the language used.
What do you mean?
It portrays immigration as a threat,
Okay.
an invasion,
Right.
a danger.
It's to be countered with force.
That rhetoric can have a real impact,
It can on public perception.
and it can lead to the dehumanization of immigrants.
Exactly.
It's not just about words, though.
Right.
These orders have consequences
Real consequences.
for real people.
Absolutely. For families, for communities.
These aren't just abstract policy debates.
No, they're not.
These are people's lives.
And we can't forget that.
So we've spent this whole deep dive looking at these executive orders on immigration,
Yeah, a lot to unpack.
and they really could, like, reshape the U.S.
Definitely could.
Redefining birthright citizenship,
Mhm.
expanding enforcement,
Yeah.
sending the military to the border.
It's a lot.
It raises a lot of questions.
He does.
One thing that really stood out to me from the ALA brief
Okay.
was just the speed.
The speed.
Yeah, like how fast
Yeah.
the administration's trying to make these changes.
Right, right.
It feels like a whirlwind.
It does feel that way.
Do you think there's enough time to think about the consequences?
That's a good question.
You know, like really consider what might happen.
I think it's a valid concern.
Okay.
Executive orders are powerful tools,
Right.
but they should be used carefully, thoughtfully, right? Especially on something as complex as immigration.
Yeah, it's not simple.
Oh, no, not at all.
And beyond the legal stuff,
Yeah.
you know,
Mhm.
what really hits home
Yeah.
is the potential consequences for people,
Right. Real people.
families.
Families, communities.
This isn't just some policy debates.
It's not theoretical.
These are people's lives.
Exactly.
The ALA brief paints a pretty stark picture.
It does.
You know, increased fear and anxiety
Mhm.
in immigrant communities,
Yeah.
family separations,
Yeah.
a breakdown of trust in law enforcement.
It's a lot to grapple with.
It is.
And we can't forget about the human element here.
Right. It's easy to get lost in the legal stuff,
It is.
the politics.
The debates.
But these are real people
Yeah.
impacted by these decisions,
Their stories matter.
and their voices need to be heard.
They do.
We need to think about the economic impact, too.
Right. Immigrants are a big part of the U.S. economy,
And these policies could really hurt businesses.
especially those that rely on immigrant labor.
Right. And it's not just the immediate impact. These
No.
policies send a message
Yeah, message to the world.
about who we are as a nation.
Exactly.
Does this hurt our reputation?
I think it's a valid concern.
You know, as a welcoming and diverse society,
That's at stake.
so much at stake.
And our relationships with other countries.
Okay.
Our ability to attract talent and investment.
It's a lot.
A lot to consider.
So we've covered a lot of ground here. What are the key takeaways you want our listeners to remember from this deep dive?
Well, first, stay informed.
Stay informed.
And engaged.
Don't just check out.
No.
This is an ongoing thing.
It is. This is just the beginning.
It could be a long legal and political battle.
Exactly. Pay attention to what's happening.
In the courts.
In Congress.
In our own communities.
It's all connected.
It is. It's important to go beyond the headlines.
Yes, beyond social media.
Dig deeper.
Exactly.
Read articles from good sources.
From reputable sources, yes.
Listen to different perspectives.
Don't just take someone's word for it.
Do your own research.
Exactly.
Form your own opinions.
Informed opinions.
Right. And second,
Second.
remember, these policies affect real people.
Yes, real people.
Don't get lost in the legal jargon.
The political debates.
Remember the human cost?
The human cost, yes.
These are our neighbors,
our colleagues,
our friends.
Their stories matter.
Their stories matter.
And their voices deserve to be heard.
And finally,
remember that you have a voice.
We do.
You have a voice.
Okay.
Make your opinions known.
To our elected officials.
Exactly.
We support organizations
that are working to protect immigrants.
Have those conversations.
Yes, respectful dialogue.
Even with people who disagree.
Exactly. It's important.
It's a reminder.
It is.
That we live in a democracy.
And our voices matter.
We can't be passive.
No.
We need to participate.
In shaping the future.
Immigration is complex.
Very complex.
No easy answer.
Not easy answers, no.
But by staying informed.
Yes.
Engaging in dialogue.
Having those conversations.
Advocating for just and humane policies.
We can work towards a better future.
A future where immigration is seen as a strength.
A source of opportunity.
A threat.
Not fear and division.
Well said.
Thank you.
As we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave our listeners with this.
Okay.
The future of immigration in the U.S. is uncertain.
It is.
But we have the power to shape it. Let's engage in this debate.
Let's have those conversations.
With compassion.
With compassion, yes.
A commitment to justice.
Absolutely.
And recognizing our shared humanity.
Our shared humanity, yes.
We're all part of a larger story.
A story that's still being written.
Let's make sure it's a good one.
A story that reflects our values.
Our aspirations.
For a more just and inclusive society.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
It's been a pleasure.
Until next time, stay curious, stay informed, and stay engaged.